Usherwood is here with us, and he's going to talk us through some of the stories on the front pages this morning. We're going to talk about Keir Starmer in a moment, because on the front page of the Times, the big headline says, Prime Minister invokes Thatcher in promise to cut red tape. He says, I'm going to clear regulatory weeds for business. I mean, it's almost like every day it feels like Keir Starmer has to say something that he's going to do, but then he doesn't do it. Let's ask him, shall we, on what he's got plans to do about growth.
We're setting out for growth, which is the #1 priority of this government, growing our economy, wealth creation. We turn the economy around, get the growth that we need, which I'm absolutely certain we can get. What I will say is that growth is the #1 priority of this government. Economic growth, wealth creation, making sure that people are better off. Growth, 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 growth.
This is in a minute, two and a half minute speech, basically. Yeah. Slightly more, maybe nearly 3 minute speech. He keeps just saying growth is the priority. But they can't just keep saying it. No. It's a bit like him saying, trust me, trust me, trust me. People go, no, we don't trust you. He's going growth, 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 growth. There isn't any.
No.
Stop taking the mickey out of the people of this country, you complete and utter wally. Sorry. I mean, I have no respect for him. No. He tells lies, right? Yesterday, we were highlighting the speech that he made before he came into power, saying, next year, we will not be allowing you to pay any more for your council tax. Not a penny more. You and I spoke about it. You know, the guy's a liar, right? I'm not having it.
He's got this problem, and what is often, and I think I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again, is that in politics, trust is hard work, hard-earned, and it's easily lost.
Yeah.
And they made a calculation whereby they made a calculation where they realised, Keir Starmer and his team realised what he needed to say to get elected. They realised what the pitfalls were, the heffalump traps were.
But how cynical and how treacherous and how absolutely and utterly despicable is that? Because you're basically telling me that they're making a case to tell as many lies as they can to get in. That's it.
Yes, and then they've ended up in a situation where they have been unable to keep promises, and they're saying, well, they're trying to, and we've seen this with the WASPy women. They make the case that actually once they've, or they made the case with the black hole, right, that actually what they know now they didn't know back then. But of course, everybody was shouting from the rooftops.
Nobody's buying that. Also, we've got a clip. Again, we've always got a clip. There's a clip from April where Keir Starmer talks about a £54 billion black hole, and he talks about the Tories trying to cover it up.
And we were shouting from the rooftops about it. And I'm not talking about journalists. I'm not talking about partisan actors in this. The Institute for Fiscal Studies, which is like, down the line, if anything, it's a left of centre, regarded as left of centre.
It is, absolutely,
was saying, no, we know the situation.
They don't like us, so that's all you need to know, right? Right? They don't like us. They come on and they always think we're going to be hostile to them because they assume that we're going to give them a hard time.
Right. Okay.
So you know they're left-wingers.
But they were saying before the election, no, we know the exact state of the economy. We know exactly what Labour is going to face when it comes, and by that point, we're talking June last year.
Yes.
We knew that Keir Starmer was going to be Prime Minister, right? We know the state of the economy. You could be honest about this, what you're going to have to do. But Labour insisted that they were not going to increase taxes. That they were going. Keir Starmer was saying that he was going to do the whole thing with economic growth, and of course they come in and then they say, well, the picture's different. We've got this £22 billion black hole that we didn't.
But he's written a piece in the Times today, right, which is what the front page of the Times goes on about. PM invokes Thatcher in promise to cut red tape. He's basically saying that he's going to follow in her footsteps. He's going to cut regulation in order to create growth, and the regulation that he says he's going to cut is all about planning. It's all about barriers that he says are in the way of creating building blocks for the economy. It's all very nebulous. None of it actually means anything, right? He actually says this: the Thatcher government in the 1980s deregulated finance capital, and that was the Big Bang, which was a massive thing. I remember it because I'm old enough to remember it. My sister got a job in the city, which she wouldn't have got because she wasn't a bloke, like 10 years earlier. She ended up working in the commodities market, going to the London Metal Exchange, met Nigel Farage working for, Drexel Burnham. It was a massive thing. This is nothing like it. He says, in the new Labour era, globalisation increased the opportunities for trade. This is our equivalent. For too long, regulation has stopped Britain building its future. Today, the Chancellor will show how this government will sweep it away. Well, sweep what away? I mean, what's he talking about? What exactly is holding Britain back? I'll tell you what's holding Britain back is the economic policy of this leading government.
So there are some small changes where, when planning regulators, planning committees on councils look at applications, that if it's a brownfield site, so previously be developed on, then actually the go-to answer is that yes, you can have the planning application, you can build.
To do what? Build houses?
Well, you've got to create the jobs as well.
Right, but
you've got to create the communities.
But what I'm saying is, once they deregulate whatever it is they're saying they're deregulating, what's the result of that?
The result of that, they would hope. I don't shoot the messenger here.
No, I know you're not speaking for them.
No, but the hope of that, the hope in all of that is that then, if they can put the onus on councils to say yes to planning applications, the hope is that people will then go out and build homes that people can afford to live in, and then we end up in a situation where, with more house builders...
Sorry, I'm going to ask you the question again, and I'm not
realise the paucity of the argument I'm putting forward.
But how is this creating any growth? How does that create growth just because you build a few houses?
That is a good question. The idea, I think, would be, Mike, that...
Because the answer is it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Right?
So I think the idea would be that you could create... I feel like I'm being...
I'm sorry, I don't mean to do this to you,
I'm trying to
think.
No, you do it. You do it because I think we're sort of thrashing out the paucity of their arguments here. Right?
Yeah.
So the idea is that you build the houses, people can then afford houses, you can then create communities where people want to live, and then they can get on the train and they can go to work.
Right.
And okay,
but it's almost like this has been dreamed up by a 4-year-old in a room with some other 4-year-olds and went, oh, isn't it great? We'll build some houses, everybody will move, and you want to get sort of David Walliams in and go, everybody will move into the houses, and then they'll all get really good jobs over there where there aren't any jobs at the moment. We'll just create the jobs, and then they'll send their children to school, and then they'll get cars, and that will boost the economy, and then they'll go shopping. It's rubbish, isn't it? It's cobblers.
There are holes. There is a point.
Holes.
There are
you
holes.
Say.
Big holes.
Yeah.
There are big holes.
There's a bloody great big sinkhole at the bottom of their economic policy, and everything's falling into it. Look, and I would guarantee you, in 2 months' time, we will not have any more growth than we got now.
No.
And yet, she's going to get up today and say, we're going to grow the economy. No, you're bloody well not, actually.
But you raise another really important point here, and these are all long-term projects. How long is it going to take to build a train line between Oxford and Cambridge with the Silicon Valley?
They're still talking about that, aren't they? This is the other thing. That's the other thing. We want to create Silicon Valley in England. That's not going to happen.
How long is it going to take? How long is it going to take to?
By the time you've taxed the people who've actually come up with the idea of forming a company and put them out of business because they can't afford to pay the people that work for them, there will be zero growth once again. Yeah. And again, I mean, it's just incredible to me how they just keep thinking they can say this crap, and we're supposed to swallow it like good little, citizens and go, oh, well done, Rachel. Fantastic. Good job. There are people outside of Downing Street who actually live in the real world who are suffering right now and who are putting their companies into hock because they can't make any money. Yeah. As I said, I was at a restaurant yesterday, a pretty successful restaurant, and they said our entire profits come April will be wiped out, and we have to decide what to do about that.
And I think there's also an issue here, Mike, in that many if you look across the cabinet, there is very little business experience. So there is very little, when it comes down to brass tacks, there's very little experience of any cabinet minister, Rachel Reeves, Jonathan Reynolds, Ed Miliband, of them knowing what it is like. And I'm talking directly, in terms of your listeners here, because they know what it's like. They're getting up now. There are people listening to this right now
who are
driving into London, or driving into
they're literally throwing things out the window, thinking they're so annoyed.
And they're like, I know what it is to sit round the table with my takings for the month and just think, oh, well, the government's going to take that. Yeah. Oh, the council's going to take that. Oh, and then what's left for me?
What's left for me?
And then they're like, well, and it's like, there was a guy who used to sell, around the corner from where I lived, he used to sell fish. He was a fishmonger. And he got to the stage where he would get to the end of the day, he'd come in, do a full day's work, pay for his rent, pay for the council for the pitch, pay his taxes, pay for his fuel, come back, and he was left with £15.
Right.
And he just got to the end of it.
You just go,
like, why bother?
What's the point?
Why bother?
Might as well just become a bank robber, or a drug dealer, or maybe an asylum seeker. Let's get a voice note from Nick on growth.
Morning, Mike. It's Nick Moore from Loughborough. Whatever Rachel Reeves says in her speech to promote growth, but in actual fact more in order to maintain her place on the ministerial gravy train is irrelevant, because until they ditch this net zero lunacy, there will be no meaningful growth in this country. It's as simple as that. Best wishes, Mike.
Nick, you are absolutely right. It is as simple as that. But it's not only the fact that net zero is going to kill any kind of growth that they want to have, it's that they haven't got a clue about business. They don't know how to make anything grow. Let's have a look at what even Beth Rigby now started to look good against these Labour people. She interviewed Rachel Reeves just the other day. Check this out.
In the manifesto, you criticised the Conservatives for taking the tax burden to a 70-year high. What is it now at the end of this Parliament after your budget? What will it be?
I'm going to be really straight with people. The tax burden overall goes up. But
What's
we've made decisions.
Up to, from where?
It's the highest burden
ever
of tax I recognise.
I mean, great. So that's supposed to be a positive. It's the highest tax burden ever, and we're going to put it up.
Yeah, and
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm going to really struggle not to say the F word at this point because I just want to go, just bugger off, just get lost. Nobody gave them this mandate to come in and tax us even more.
No, and that, you know, that was they insisted that they weren't going to put up taxes for working people. Namely, you know, £25 billion is a huge tax rise on national insurance.
Right.
That's you know, this was. To put it into context, when Gordon Brown came in 1997, and I appreciate we have inflation, but when he came in as Chancellor in 1997, he put up taxes by 14 billion quid. Right? Rachel Reeves comes in and puts up taxes by 40 billion quid. So that gives
but also, let's
some...
remember, when Gordon Brown came in to do that, taxes were much lower than they were when Rachel Reeves came in.
Yeah, and it's working people. It is people doing jobs.
Working people
who are struggling.
Yeah.
But that's not just, you know, that's not just from like those at the very bottom of the ladder.
No.
That stretches right up.
Yeah, of course it does.
Because people are struggling to make ends meet.
Totally. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Anyway.